This happened to me a few years ago on a Tuesday morning. At the time, I was cleaning on my own, picking up clients by referral or through Craigslist. I had already done some services there, and I had never experienced anything really bad. But this time, everything seemed right until the moment the door opened, and it wasn't who I expected to see. I live in Salt Lake City and have been cleaning for almost 5 years. I've always done well, I have my steady clients, but from time to time those holes in the schedule come up, you know. So, in order not to run out of income on my free days, I used to look for some ads on Craigslist. He had already cleaned student apartments, accumulator garages, and even trailers on the road. I never had a problem. It was just a matter of chatting by message, email, making an appointment, and moving on. On that specific day, I saw an ad posted by someone named Angela M. Out with the following title: I need a cleaner for heavy cleaning in an old house. I'm taking care of my mother's house, and I need help to get everything in order. There is a lot of dust and some areas are very dirty. 6 hours of work. Women only, please. I had the afternoon free, and the value offered was great. I sent a message, and minutes later, I received a response from Angela, confirming the address and saying, "Thank you for accepting. We will wait for you." I arrived at the place at the scheduled time. It was an old house made of red bricks on a street without much movement. The house was visibly unkempt, the garden all dry, and the windows all closed with heavy curtains. When I knocked on the door, I imagined that I would see a woman, but the one who opened it was a man. He was about 40 years old, tall, thin, with unshaven beard and a grimy t-shirt. He opened the door and said with an embarrassed smile, "Hi, are you the cleaning lady?" "Yes," I agreed with Angela, answered. "Of course, it's my wife. She went out to take the children to school, but she warned me that you would come." My belly turned over right away, but I tried to disguise it. "That's right then," I replied almost in a whisper. He offered me one of those uniforms, saying that Angela had left it separate, that it was to protect my clothes. I accepted, more out of politeness, and he pointed to a small room at the back of the kitchen, saying, "There is the maid's room. You can leave your things there and change." When I arrived at the door of that little room, my heart raced. It was a small room with a single bed, a chair next to it and soundproofed walls, a glass window with an iron railing almost close to the roof of the house. I thought that was very strange, and I just thought about getting out of there when I turned around. He was standing at the entrance of the kitchen looking at me, so I tried to disguise it and asked to use the bathroom. He pointed to the hallway and said, "Stay there. First door on the right." I went into the bathroom and closed the door tightly. That's when I started to think that I didn't have any Angela. The house was very dirty, but not only with dust. The floor had dark stains. The smell was strong, a mixture of moisture, mold, and something rotten. The windows were all closed from the inside and with thick curtains, as if they didn't want anyone to look from the outside. And what about that maid's room then? Inside, I began to tremble. I took the cell phone out of my pocket and sent a message to my cousin. "Cousin, I'm in a strange house. It was supposed to be a cleaning at the house of the mother of a woman named Angela, but there is only one man here. The house is filthy and smells horrible. The windows are all closed, the maid's room is soundproofed, and a small window almost on the roof of the house. I'm scared," she replied at the time. "Get out of there, cousin. Wind up this man. Me and Marcos are going to pick you up. Send the address." I sent the location. I stayed there in the bathroom as long as I could. About 10 minutes later, the man knocked on the door and asked, "Is everything okay there?" I had a malaise, but I'm already better. Answered, trying to sound natural, but my voice failed in the end. I went out, asked for a glass of water, and said that sometimes my blood pressure dropped, but that it soon got better. He gave me the water, and I went to sit in the chair closest to the exit door I could find. It was then that I noticed the door was locked with a key, and the key was not there. He watched me, with narrow, fixed eyes, and he said, "You should go rest there for a while in the little room until you feel better. There's even a bed there. It's better than sitting there." "Oh, no need. If I lie down, it gets worse. I'm used to it." Answered. He started pacing back and forth. I passed by the living room, came back. Then he would go to the kitchen, open and close cabinets. Hectic, restless, stranger and stranger. I sat there trying to stay calm, just waiting for the sound of the bell. After about 20 minutes, I heard loud knocks on the door. The man looked at me with a surprised face and asked me to go inside. I pretended it was okay. I ran to the bathroom, grabbed my bag and came back. By that, he had already opened the door. My cousin's husband had stood at the entrance of the door, and my cousin was already inside the room saying that something serious had happened to my mother, a detail that my mother had already died a few years ago. I left right away asking what had happened to my mother. I walked out the door without even looking at the man, who just didn't open his mouth, but seemed angrier than ever. Before we even got to the gate, we heard the force with which he slammed the door. We went straight to the police. I told them everything, the announcement, the name Angela, what happened inside the house, the room with isolation, the man's behavior, but I don't know if the police really investigated. They never called me. Today, my cousin and I can laugh at the situation, but at the time we feared the worst. I will always be grateful to my cousin and her husband for coming to rescue me. When I told this to other people, they asked me why I didn't call the police right away, because I didn't want to risk the man hearing me, and I knew that my cousin would find a way to pick me up. I still continue to work with cleaning. It's what helps me keep the bills up to date, and even pay for the aesthetics course I started taking. But today, I only serve fixed clients, or referrals from relatives and acquaintances. From time to time, I still look at Craigslist ads. More out of curiosity, I've even seen some ads similar to that one, but none with Angela's name. This happened to me at the end of 2022 when I was desperate for money. I accepted a renovation service found on Craigslist, and to this day, I regret not listening to my gut that day. I live in Tacoma, Washington. I had left a horrible warehouse job a few months ago, and I was running out of money. I didn't want to ask my mother for money again, so I decided to look for some temporary service online. I saw an ad on Craigslist. Retirement helper wanted $150 a day. Light work. Immediate start. It looked great. It was in a remote neighborhood, but accessible by bus. The man who answered me was called Richard. The answer came with an address, the time, 10 o'clock in the morning, and a short text. Arrive on time. Bring gloves and snacks. You don't need to bring a uniform. No fuss. I found him direct, but not rude. And for $150 in my pocket at the end of the day, I was willing to swallow any rudeness. I took a bus at 8:30 in the morning and then walked about 20 minutes until I reached the indicated house. It was a dead-end street, a little far away with few occupied houses. The house where he was working looked old and abandoned. Roof half crooked, fence falling down, tall weeds. There was a white van parked in front with the door open. I knocked on the door and a thick voice answered from within. "You can come in, door open." Richard was a tall man with a shabby white beard and wore a sweatshirt. He was sitting on his cell phone. When he saw me, he said, "Did you send a message yesterday?" "Yes, it's me," answered. "Beauty. It will be easy. I'm renovating this place to sell. I just need you to help me remove debris, tear out carpet and carry some things." He handed me a dirty jumpsuit to wear, and we started with what seemed to be the old double bedroom. The carpet was moldy, and the smell inside the house was heavy, moldy, damp wood, and something sour like spoiled food. But I didn't want to look fresh. The whole house was dark, with windows covered in sidings and only a few working lamps. We worked together for almost 2 hours. He didn't talk much. He only gave dry orders. "Wow, hold that. Play in the basement." Yes, it had a basement. The staircase was narrow, made of wood, and the ceiling down there was so low that we had to walk half bent over. It was damp and windowless. From time to time, he would tell me to come down with black bags or pieces of old wood and pile everything up in a corner. The third time I went downstairs, I noticed that there was more to that basement than just rubble. I saw a wheelchair covered by a sheet, a suitcase with a broken zipper, and an old torn armchair turned on its side. I went up again and commented, half-jokingly, "Are you going to throw it all away too?" Richard did not answer. He only stared at me for a second longer than usual. Then he turned his back and said, "Make another trip and let's have lunch." On the fourth trip to the basement, he came down with me, carrying a large piece of broken closet. When we got downstairs, he leaned the piece against the wall and, without any warning, ran up the stairs, turned off the light, and closed the door. "Hey!" screamed. "Richard, are you kidding?" That's when the instinct came to me. Take the cell phone, call the police. But at the same time, I remembered my cell phone was not with me. When I arrived at the house, Richard gave me an old construction overall, saying that I wouldn't get my clothes dirty. He was one of those without pockets. So, as a precaution, I left my things, cell phone, wallet, and my folded clothes inside the backpack, in a corner of the room, right at the entrance. I had no way to call anyone. I tried to think fast with my heart beating in my neck. The darkness of the basement was thick and humid, and the feeling of being buried under that house made my whole body want to run away, but there was nowhere to go. I started groping around the walls looking for something I could use. That's when I found a half-loose, rusty iron pipe in the corner opposite the stairs. I knelt down and began to force the pipe against the bottom of the door, near the lock. Blow after blow. The wood creaked, cracked until it finally gave way. I ran out, heart racing, breath bated, and went straight out of the house. The white van was no longer there. I turned my head in all directions. No sign of Richard. Not a soul alive on the street. I ran back inside, desperate, and went to the corner where I had left my backpack. She was no longer there. Nor my clothes, not even my cell phone, nor the wallet. Nothing. Not knowing what to do, I started walking down the street, sweating with teary eyes. After a few minutes, I found an open gas station. I went in and went straight to the counter. The attendant looked at me strangely. "Is everything okay, man?" I told him everything, the way I did it, to pieces. The attendant widened his eyes, picked up the phone and called the police immediately. The police arrived in less than 10 minutes. I went with them to the house. I showed everything, the basement, the stairs, the place where I was trapped, the improvised room downstairs. They found everything exactly as I described, but no sign of Richard. The name he used on Craigslist did not exist. The van had false license plates. And the house? It was in the name of a lady who had died 2 years earlier. The property was abandoned and in legal proceedings. According to the police, it was probably not the first time he had done this. Maybe I was only using that house for a few days. Maybe he would do it in several cities. Maybe the goal wasn't even to hurt me, just to steal my things. But no one could guarantee it. They never found him. Not even my things. Today, I work in a hardware store which a friend recommended to me. I never accepted any job without a reference. Since that day, I can't see a Craigslist ad. The same way sometimes I even see some things that are for sale at a very good price. But I can't buy. Just remembering the suffocation I went through, the interest passes right away. This happened to me about 3 years ago, when I moved to another city to work as a photography assistant. At the time, I was looking for a place with a good price to live, and I found an ad on Craigslist that seemed perfect. But when I got there with a friend, I quickly understood that this place was not what it seemed. In fact, maybe it wasn't even a room. And today I think that could have ended very, very badly. I had just moved to Austin, Texas. It was early autumn, and I was at an acquaintance's house sleeping on an inflatable mattress while looking for a fixed room. My idea was to find something that didn't have a very high price, with quiet people and close to the central region. I saw an ad on Craigslist that caught my attention immediately. Single room in shared house with kitchen, living room and furnished bathrooms, family-friendly environment, no mess. There were 2 photos, one of the living room and the other of the kitchen, everything beautiful. The location was great, the price was reasonable, and the text was simple and direct. It said that the house was shared by 2 co-workers and that the other room was vacant because one of the tenants had moved out at the last minute. I sent a message asking if I could visit at the end of the day. A certain Matthew replied by saying yes, and reinforced that it would be better after 8 o'clock at night, because before that they would be out. I thought it was natural. We set the time. As it was an area that I did not know well, I asked my friend David to accompany me. He lived with his parents 10 minutes away and agreed right away. We arrived at the right time. The house was in one of those quiet residential neighborhoods with low fences and yellow light on the streetlights. The facade looked normal, but it was a little dark. The balcony light was off and the street was practically deserted. I knocked on the door. A man opened it almost immediately. "Are you Sarah?" he asked. "It's me." "This is David, my friend," answered. He hesitated for a second. The look he gave to David was almost automatic, as if he didn't expect me to have company. But then he said, "Ah, beauty, get." Inside, the house was bigger than it looked, but strangely empty. Few furniture. A large sofa in the living room, little decoration, and a ring light with a tripod pointed at the center of the room. I tried to break the ice by saying, "Cool this ring light. Do you work with videos?" He laughed too fast and said, "Right. That's right. We record some things for the internet." Nothing much. At that moment, a second man came out of one of the rooms. He introduced himself and seemed not to expect to see anyone else with us. The same look of disappointment. He fixed his eyes on David, then turned away. I pretended I didn't notice, but inside something told me that there was something wrong. Matthew got straight to the point, and he said, "So I'm going to show you where your room would be." We followed along the corridor. David was a little behind, but attentive. Matthew opened a door and pointed with a smile. "It's here." Looked. It was a tiny pantry. It had a shelf, a half-stained wooden floor, and an air circulator. At the time, I tried to keep my composure, and I said, "Wow, it's smaller than I imagined. I have a lot of things, bed, macaw, books, boxes." I took a step back, and he said, "I don't think everything fits in here." He insisted and spoke, "You can take out the shelves, and you can use part of the aisle to store what doesn't fit." "I don't think it's possible. My bed is a double. There's no way." Answered. David walked over and looked into space without saying a word. The tension in the air was visible. I spoke firmly, "I don't think it will work, but thank you for receiving us." Without giving time to respond, I turned around and started walking back to the room. They followed us in silence. I opened the door and felt the cold night air hit my face. Only then did I realize that my whole body was tense. We went down the 2 steps of the balcony without saying anything. When we turned the corner of the street, only then did I look at David. He just said, "They were waiting for you to come alone." That pantry was not a room, that was never for rent. Answered, he hugged me. A quick, firm hug, like someone who understands without having to speak. And he said, "Let's go to my house. My parents are there. Call from there." We went straight to his house. His mother gave me some water. His father was outraged. I called the police right there, told them everything, the announcement, the visit, the men, the fake room. The light pointed at the sofa. The attendant was polite, asked several questions and said she would register the occurrence for investigation. That was 3 years ago. I never received any response. No link, no visits, nothing. The ad disappeared from Craigslist the next day. The number that answered me, deactivated. The house? I never had the courage to go ahead again. Nowadays, I continue to live in Austin, sharing an apartment with 2 co-workers, and I never entered any internet ad again. This happened to me a few years ago, at a time when I was trying to set up my first gamer setup with the little money I had. I thought I had found a great opportunity in an online ad, but it turned out to be the worst decision of my life. To this day, every time I pass by that street, I feel a shiver, because now I know that ad was never about a computer. I must have been about 23 years old at the time. I worked as a stockist in a department store and spent my evenings watching setup videos on YouTube, dreaming of a computer that could run at least one Warzone without crashing. I didn't have the money to buy anything new, so I was always searching on second-hand sites, and that's when I got on Craigslist. I saw an ad that caught my attention right away. Complete PC gaming for a good price. Pick up on site. The photos looked real, not generic, and the equipment looked good. In the text it said like this: "We're moving, and that's why we're selling this used gaming PC, but working perfectly. Pick up on site. Important. We only schedule visits from 19 o'clock, as there is no one at home before that time. We do not deliver. The interested party needs to come by car to pick it up." It seemed fair. A good price, but not too cheap. And that observation of the time even seemed like something of someone who has a normal routine. I answered the announcement. A man named Eric responded soon after, saying he could wait for me on Thursday. I texted a friend, but he couldn't go with me. I thought about postponing it, but the fear of losing that computer spoke louder. On Thursday, I left work and went straight home. I changed my clothes, took my coat wallet and drove to the address. It was a more remote neighborhood, but not so isolated. Simple houses, streets with dim lighting, few people on the sidewalk. The house number was easy to identify, a one-story house, wooden facade, front yard and a small porch. The one who was waiting for me there was Eric himself. Black t-shirt, jeans, about 40-something. He nodded, came down from the balcony and asked, "Did you come for the ad?" "Yes, from Gaming PC," answered. "It is here. The moving truck left this morning, so it's kind of empty here. But the computer is still in the office. You can come in." The house, inside, was totally empty. No carpets, no sofa, no furniture. Some marks on the floor showed where the furniture had been before. "We're moving to Florida," he said. "I got a job there. Most of the stuff has already been in the truck this morning. We will leave it in a warehouse, but the gaming PC and some office furniture we decided to sell." He walked down the hallway and pointed to a door, which was at the end of the hallway. "It's right there in the office," he said. I followed him. He opened the door. Everything was empty. No table, no chair, no computer, nothing. I turned my head towards him. The last thing I saw was the shadow of a shadow coming from the side. I woke up with my head throbbing, a taste of blood in the mouth, a cut on the side of the head. He was lying on the floor of what seemed to be the same room, now dark. I tried to get up, dizzy, staggering. I was leaning against the wall for a few seconds until I managed to get out. There was no one there. The house seemed even quieter than before. A heavy silence. I walked to the entrance of the house, dizzy, with my hand on my head and with my vision a little blurred. When I got to the street, I looked straight at the place where I had left my car parked. He was no longer there. Only then did the penny drop. I didn't have any gaming PC. That was a trap. They wanted the car. I put my hand in the pocket of my coat, on impulse. My cell phone was still with me. It was strange, but it made sense later. They didn't want to take it for fear of being tracked. I called the police, still shaking, trying to organize what I was going to say. They arrived some time later. They asked me a lot of questions. Description of the man. From the house, from the car, from the announcement. Then they took me straight to a hospital to check the head injury. Nothing serious, just a few points, fortunately. About 20 days later, the police called me saying that they had found my car. Or at least what's left of it. It was abandoned in a neighboring town, partially dismantled. Wheels, steering wheel, battery, and even seats were missing. The police told me that, from the description I gave of the man, he was already wanted for similar crimes. He used fake profiles, changed addresses frequently, lured victims with plausible ads, always with the excuse of moving. To this day they have not found him, nor the accomplice who attacked me. I managed to buy a car from a friend, paid in installments many times, and, as a way to compensate for the trauma, my mother gave me a new gaming PC as a birthday present. But after that, I never looked at any ad on the internet in the same way if the price seems too good. Maybe the product is you.